Bezos Hashem was starting Sefer Yeshua Park Aleph Pasuk Yud Gimel. It's a hemshech of the conversation that Yeshua ben Nun is having, as the previous Pasuk Yud Beis says, "V'la Ruveni v'la Godi v'la Chatzi Shevet Hamanash Omar Yeshua Lemar." So what did he tell them? What was the Lemar? Zachor, you should remember, as Hadavar Shetziv Eschem Moshe V'ed Hashem Lemar. You should remember the thing. The Targum says the Pisgama, the Pisgam, the Hachlata, the idea. The Moshe commanded you, and again it refers to Moshe as Eved Hashem over here. Hashem Elokeichem meiniach lechem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making it easier for you. V'nosan lechem es haaretz hazos, and He's giving over this land to you. So there's no Rashi on this pasuk. The Metzudah says a lashon of over here meiniach. So before that, Zachor aleichem liskar. It's upon you to remember, meaning it's upon Shevet Ruven and Gad and to the Chatzi Shevet Hamanash to remember on their own. And that's what Yeshua is saying, Zachor, to remember. He's not warning them. I think the Kliyokar speaks of that. He's not being mazhir them, he's being mazkir to them. He's mentioning to them that you have something that you have to know. Aleichem liskar is something for you to remember. What do you have to remember? So this that you were makabel on yourself to do, to take care of, to be leichem the milchama. That Bnei Gad and Reuven is going to go in front of the rest of the machane to fight a war, to be leichem against the Goyim and Eretz Yisrael. And Metzudah says, "Vayter miniach neisen lechem makom menucha is going to give you a place to rest. B'seis lechem haaretz hazeh shaveh v'razeh." Once you cross over the Yarden, meaning once Klal Yisrael crosses over the Yarden, you're going to fight a war for them. Then you could go back to your Mokum Menucha that's on this side of the Yarden as opposed to the other side of the Yarden where everyone else is going to be. Now it's interesting because the Abarbanel speaks on this concept that the Metzudah spoke at also, and he says, with this Zachar, this remembering that he was telling them to do, he was reminding them about the Shvuah that they said, what they were makabel on themselves and what they were makayim by crossing over, what they said they were going to do after they crossed over the Yarden. And aside from what they were makabel on themselves by the neder that they made to Moshe Rabbeinu, and as we explained, b'shem de b'skirov, that there was more than that. They couldn't back out of the Tanai, because once they made the Tanai, there was a tzivya of Hashem, and we were medayik this in the psukim. Yeshua wanted on his own to bring them to this understanding, this recognition, that was the right thing to do because they were makabel on themselves. He wasn't here to give them musar. He was just reminding them, hey, listen, you were makabel on yourself something once upon a time. Actually, it wasn't that long ago, but you have to make sure that you're going to tend to that and take care of that properly. It's very interesting. At the end of Sefer Yeshua, towards the very end in Perkov Beis, when Yeshua sends them back to Eva Yarden, to the places that they were kavish before they were kavish Eretz Yisrael, the pasuk says, "Atam shemartam eskola shetziv esem Moshe v'ed Hashem." Says you kept everything that Moshe commanded you, v'tishvu b'koili, and you listened to my voice, l'chola shetzivis eschem, and everything that I commanded you. Shehine remez l'tanai Moshe l'tanoisa. He was being meramis to the Tanai of Moshe Rabbeinu and to the Tainus that came with the Tanai. The Tanai is the etzem halacha, the etzem Tanai that they were conditioned that they made. But the Tainus is everything else that comes along with it, all the other ideas that they spoke about. And this is what the pasuk means when the pasuk says that Hashem is leaving it for you as a makom menucha. That this is something that Yeshua was telling them on their own. Pay attention to, he was telling the people and my brothers to pay attention to the great miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do with us. Because you saw how much hatzlacha you had when you conquered the land of Sichin and Oik. Nobody else started up with you. It's a very big chiddush, because many times what happens is, nation A starts up with nation B, nation C gets scared, so they join together with nation D and they tried to fight against the other ones. But over here it wasn't like that. They left them alone. And it's rather interessant because we'll see in the beginning of Parak Beis by Rachav, it says that they were very scared. She said that they heard about what happened. Kishamanu, it's Pasuk Yud. Kishamanu es asher hoivesh Hashem es meyamsum hipnechem seisim imitzrayim v'asher asisim shlemalch amor shebe'var yarden l'sichun u'loget shachramta moisam. There was a tremendous fear in the inhabitants in the people that were living in Eretz Canaan at the time, because they heard about the milchamas that Klal Yisrael was doing. They were doing a good job, Vaistais. And also they had Hashem on their team, Hashem and the other ones. They were doing Avodah Zarah, so they were automatically on the losing end of things. Especially now. There's no milchama, there's nobody, right now at this point, before the course of Yarden, they were in it was a very peaceful time for them. There was nobody bothering them, there was nobody that was holding them back from crossing over the Yarden together with the rest of Klal Yisrael. It's very interesting. He's not telling them that in the future you'll be zeichet to menucha. It sounds like that because of what the milchamas that you did to conquer Eretz Sichon v'Oig, therefore now you'll be able to start the milchama in Eretz Yisrael at a very peaceful point, not with a chaotic point. They were victorious. Because they were victorious in the milchama with Sichon v'Oig, they were looking forward to being victorious with the other Zayin Amimim that they were going to start fighting against pretty soon after they were going to come into Eretz Yisrael. Hashem orchestrated like this specifically on B'dafka, that they should be well rested and settled and in a very calm frame of mind, as we spoke previously, that Yeshua didn't want to work anybody up to get nervous or excited about the Milchama. So Hashem orchestrated this Ashkacha protest, that there should be tremendous menucha and tremendous, everything was very settled, everything was very miyushiv. And it doesn't just mean that in terms of the nation surrounding them, but it means in the terms of Klal Yisrael, that each individual was in a very settled frame of mind, ready to do the Ratzon Hashem, the Tzivui of Hashem. This Milchama wasn't a Milchama b'Teiras, just taking over land. This was a Milchama of Klal Yisrael being Yerush, the land that belonged to them, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to them. And he gives them another idea. He's giving them this land of Eretz Yisrael. Right? And he goes on to explain this nikud that I just explained. That the idea is like this. They didn't decide, we were so victorious with Milchama Sichon v'Oig, so let's be victorious again, let's beat up the Zayin Umas and get rid of them. That's not what's going on over here. It was a tzivui of Hashem. And it's not just a tzivui of Hashem to go into this country and fight with these people and take it over. But the idea is it's a mitzvah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that they should go to Milchama over here. But the idea is because Hashem Lekechem Nasna Lechem, it's our Yerusha, it's ours. HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised it to Avraham Avinu by the Bris Ben Absar, as we spoke from the Brisker of also, that even the parts of Eretz Yisrael that are in Eivra Yarden were also given over to Avraham Avinu by the Bris Ben Absar. So then they have to go fight, they have to go take care of it. They're not exempt. There was no patur for them that they didn't have to go fight together with the rest of Klal Yisrael. Nor of us. They made this Tanai. And the Tanai went through as we spoke. But then there's the Tzivui, and they have to stick to their plan, they have to stick to their guns, as it was explained in the previous week and previous year. Fine. A few more ha'aras before we go fight there. The Alshich says over here, the Zem Mamri Yeshua, in this day Yeshua says, Zachar as Hadavar Shatzives Chemesha, means to say like this. I think it would be more of a shaila how to understand what and when the pasuk of Hashem Lekechem Iniach Eschem V'Nasal Lechem Es Aretz Hazos is going on. Is that going on something previously? Is that going on now? Is that going on Eifar Yarden? Is that going on Eretz Yisrael itself? So that's what the Alshich seems to be addressing a little bit. And he says along the lines of like this. He says this that Yeshua tells them to remember, because this that Moshe Rabbeinu commanded them, that they have to go fight the war together with everybody else, is not because, meaning Klal Yisrael is not relying on Shevet Gad and Shevet Ruvain to be the ones to fight the war. They're the ones that are going to lead the war. as we'll speak in a little bit, that God Befrat was the leader he was the warrior and the fighter of Klal Yisrael. Meila, that's why he's going to be the one that's going to lead them. But about it's not it's not loy b'chayv loy b'kayach. It's all miyad Hashem. Hashem lekechem iniach eschem, and He's going to make you be matzliach in this battle. V'nasan lechem es aretz hazois asher bachartem, and because if they wouldn't want Eretz Canaan, He wouldn't be mitzvah them to do anything, and He wouldn't make them go over to fight, because the bitachon is not in them. The bitachon is in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's not even a question. And we stress that a lot, and hopefully we'll get back to discussing it even more as we go further. It's just interesting that it would sound like, who's Yeshua addressing over here? The pashtus is that he's talking to Bnei Gad and Reuven. But there's a lot of lemurs going on, even from the previous pasuk. Yeshua said the following saying. What does saying mean? To say it over to other people. So if you go back even further, he was talking to the Shaitrim. So the pashtus is Yeshua is talking to the Shaitrim to talk to Bnei Gad and Reuven, who are then going to tell it over to others. So what does that mean exactly? So it's also a shaila. So the Etzem Yeshua didn't feel mechuyev. This is from the Kilas Yaakov. That says that, not the Stipler, it's an earlier Pirush on Yeshua. He says that originally he didn't want to be masked the Tzivya of Hashem, because he wanted them to be responsible and live up to it on their own. But it's Ken time that he wasn't even talking to them, he was talking to the Shaitrim, and the Shaitrim would then give it over to Bnei Gad and Reuven to make sure that they're going to carry out their tonight what they did. So he says that's a pshat in the pasuk, La Reuven V'Lagad Omar Yeshua. Because it should have said that Vayomer Yeshua l'Reuven v'Lagad, as we were on last time, and it says like V'Omar Par l'Bnei Yisrael. Fine, that's how he says it over here. Fine. Now let's go weiter to continue explaining what's going on in this pasuk and what we have to know over here. So the idea is like this: the concept that he's reminding them. Again, it's not so much that they were going to forget. But again, it was like a subtle, still a hate, edel azach. He didn't call them in. Okay, you have to remember, give them a little pep talk. That's not what it was about b'chlal. It was very much just to remind them that, you're machar something. You got to do it. It's like you wake somebody up for chakras. You don't beat them up. You tell them gently, nicely. You have to have the chakras, so you got to do. Okay. The Malbim explains this al pi pasuk in Sefer Dvarim, Parshas Dvarim, Per Gimel, pasuk Yud Ches. V'atzab eschem b'eisei leimar Hashem elekechem nasan lechem es aretz l'rishdo chalutzim tavru. And I commanded Moses, this is Moshe talking, I commanded you at that time, saying that Hashem elekechem is giving you the land to yarshin it. You should cross over the Yarden chalutzim. Rak neshechem tavchem ad asher yoniach Hashem la'achechem kachem. Just the women and the children will not, until Hashem will settle things for you, will settle things for achechem, for your brothers, being not Bnei Gad and Reuven, until they're as settled as you. So let's see what this means. Pashtus, there's an idea over here that Bnei Gad and Reuven were the warriors, but they were already settled in a sense. They had the makam of Bnei Gad and Reuven, their chelak of Eva Yarden already settled, already miyoshev. So Moshe Rabbeinu is telling them that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzvah you to do what you have to do to be like him together with Klal Yisrael. Ad asher yoniach Hashem la'achechem kachem. Until Hashem settles it for your brothers like you, meaning that they'll be as settled as you are when they finish as you are now. There was a tonight that they made in Parshas Matas, Parak Lamed Beis, which we spoke about. Omar v'nechbesha ha'aretz l'fnei Hashem ve'achar tashuvu shleichavim l'sakav ad achar kibush. Etzem chiyuv that they had, the etzem tziva that they had, the etzem responsibility that they had, was only until after they finished conquering the land. But we see in Mishnah Torah that he reminded them that they have to stay there until after the Chalukas Haaretz. But if you look in the original tonight, that wasn't there. So he told them that it's min hayosher that that's the proper thing to do, that you should stick around and wait until after the Chiluk Aretz as well, and not run away. And that's the idea of as we just said. And there's another reason for this, and like the pasuk says in Parashas Matos, that Moshe made a Tanai with them, that they should go sheyelchu chalutzim l'fnei Hashem, that it's dafka l'fnei Hashem. V'avalchem kol chalutz l'fnei Hashem, nichbush ha'aretz l'fnei Hashem, because going into this milchama, going into take over Eretz Yisrael, to be kodesh Eretz Yisrael, to be mekadosh Eretz Yisrael, to be mekadosh klal Yisrael with Eretz Yisrael, is going to be b'derech neis, and they wouldn't have to sit around over there until the kibush. And when Moshe is talking to them in Parshas Dvarim, he's talking to them, you'll have to fight a war. So that sounds like it's very much b'derech hateva. And we'll see in the next pasuk, V'atem taver chamushim l'fnei achechem. He says l'fnei achechem. If it's l'fnei achechem, it's not going to be l'fnei Hashem. What does that mean? If it's l'fnei Hashem, that means that you're going to do a mitzvah. If you're doing a mitzvah, you have a lot of siyata d'shmaya, and the idea is that you're having a lot of siyata d'shmaya in a sense that you're fighting a ruchnis de gezach, and like Rashi says in the beginning of Parashas Dvarim, that if not for the Chet and miracle, they would have just came in and all the goyim would have just ran away from in front of them. That would be much more l'fnei Hashem. But now we're talking about l'fnei Acheicha, so then it's not going to be l'fnei Hashem. So that's why they had to wait until the end of the Chalukah, because till the end of the Chalukah, till everyone's settled. But Parshas, it's like this. I don't know if this is exactly 100%, but this is how I'm thinking of it now. It is like this. What's the idea of the Shebesh HaKivshu and the Shebesh HaChilku? If the word is just because, so for the Malcham we understand why everyone had to be there. These were the warriors. Makes sense. Why did they have to be there for the Chalukas Haaretz? So that doesn't make any sense, right? So it's Mina Yosher. So it's Mina Yosher to wait for everyone to get settled. Like the bus driver doesn't want to leave until everyone's sitting, or the plane doesn't take off until everyone's seatbelts are fastened. So they're not going to go back to Eretz Yisrael ve'oig, the place that they conquered, until everybody's settled. And if you go through the Gemara, ikad nechel lebehar, ikad nechel lebevika. And, this one is a little more kvetchy, this one's a little more pechetchy, so till you're Masadr it, then it was Begoyrel, it was with Tumim, was with Ruach HaKodesh, was with Nevuah. As we know from the Pesukim, as we know from Chazal, we know exactly how it happened. What do they have to be there for? What do you need warriors for that? Oh, you're a pechet, so now we have warriors to go make sure that you stop kvetching about it? That's not the pshat. I don't think that's the pshat. I think that what's going on over here is, it's much more of a practical warfare tactic. That in the sense that we're going in and we're taking over this land, so even if we technically rat out most of the people and people start settling in and we start building up and people start settling in over there, it's very shaykh that the enemy is going to come back and get us. They're going to regroup, rebrand, and start fighting against us. As we're sort of seeing now with the Hamas and Eretz Yisrael, but. But the idea is like this. The idea is that if they have the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven with them the entire time, then even b'shas the chiluk, if there's going to be any problems, the loichmim, the chalutzei tzava, they're mizuyanim, they're chamushim, they're ready to fight, they're ready to continue the battle. So it wasn't just 7 years. So it was 7 years of Iker fighting, but then there were 7 years of much smaller fights going on, just to keep things calm and to keep things settled. And that could go back also to what we're saying. Hashem is going to be siyata d'shmaya to be settled like this as well. And that's what Yeshua is saying over here in the pasuk, in our pasuk, Hashem l'keichem iniach lechem. Because there's 2 points over here. There's one thing is there's the menucha, that the women and the children can now settle b'menucha, and they're not traveling around. They have where to stay and they have where to go. And another thing is that you'll have for yourself you'll have the land of what you requested and what you want. Meaning, Bnei Gad and Reuven will get that. Okay, that's the malum, and l'chayra some of an explanation b'chlal on what the idea why the Bnei Gad and Reuven needed to be there for the chiluk, for the chalukas aretz as well, because it's not just that to ensure that everyone's going to get their chiluk. Okay. Nachar in the pasuk is Zachor is Lashon Yachid, and he was talking to a group of people, he should have said B'Lashon Rabbah. So we mentioned previously that there's an idea, not Zichru, we should have said Zichru. Zechor es advar shetziv eschem Moshe eschem B'Lashon Rabbah. So why don't you start off the pasuk B'Lashon Rabbah? So we mentioned previously that there's a concept that if they were coming la'achechem kachem, they were coming into Eretz Yisrael together, kish echad, b'lev echad, to go fight the Zionumis that are in Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan. The Netzach talks Zayimid and the Sahara, and he says that although it's true that the Baalei Hapshat say that the Zachor over here is K'moi Zichru, he says, Kvar yadati yedidi, you know my friends, Ein ritzaynenu b'zeh, we don't want to go with this mahalach, she'ein mikra b'Torah. There's nothing by chance in the Torah, if you have a kol uksav miyad Hashem. If it says Zachor, there's a reason for it. Don't say it's K'moi Zichru, there's a specific reason why it's written this way. So he wants to explain like this. He brings a pasuk in Tehillim, Azay, Kapitel Kuf Yud Aleph, Zecher Asa L'Nefloisav, that we should make a remembrance for the Neflois that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us. The Koyach HaZikaron, he says, is called a Zachar. Why? Because the Koyach V'Hatzir Harishon HaNitga Bereishis is Havas HaMaisa U'Mashpia L'Halam Be'ichur HaZman. The Koyach HaZikaron, the Koyach of memory, it's called Zachar, because a Zachar is Mashpia, and because it gives a Koyach and a Tzir Harishon, meaning that's how everything connects, and once you remember one thing, it connects to the next thing, and you remember the next thing, you remember the next thing. So the original thought, the Haschalas HaZikaron, the Haschalas HaRemembrance, so to speak, is going on. The Reishis is Havas HaMaisa, and it's Mashpia, it helps your mind go weiter and weiter. That's what he says. And he says it's similar to a Zachar, that's Mashpia as opposed to a Mekabel, that's Mekabel. And he explains that the Koyach HaRishon, meaning that this first ability to remind yourself of something, is Moiled L'Zmanim Acherim, to remember Ha'inyan HaNeshava Mikedem Kadmosa. Al Kein Nikar B'Lashon HaKodesh Zachar. Zecher, Zachar, it's all the same thing, because the Zikaron comes from the fact that it's the Haschalas HaZechira. Meaning, if we're thinking about an idea for a long time already, and that came from a memory, so that's not the haskalah. That's already from what was mushba from the haskalah hazikar, and that's the pshat in Zecher also in Fleisav. He says it makes a koyach to be mashpia from to also koyach hashpal and the Fleisav shebchol es yushba and the Fleis kiilum isman rishon as hava apel. And the idea is that when we're reminding ourselves of the nisim, so we're of the neflois that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for us. So being that we're remembering it, it's not just that it's like a memory, but it's actually we're reliving it because it's ki'ilu mizman harishon as hava apela. It says, and this is scientifically proven that when a person remembers about something many times, the person actually relives it to the point when many times people even feel the same sensations that they felt when they went through that Givasinian. And he says that he was marich on this in his Rosh Limei Chanukah, Ein Shom the Bnei Saschem. And he goes right there and he says that this is what he says, that by Moshe Rabbeinu was Mitzav and Egod Meruven, and that's where this idea took root. And also by Chatzi Shevet HaMenashe, it's all the same idea. V'hinei lefizat tzivu Moshe, this that Moshe commanded them was, meaning what are they remembering here? Zikaron means to connect to something from the past. What are they connecting to over here? They're connecting to the tzivui from when they had this conversation, when they had this discussion with Moshe Rabbeinu. So, meaning when you first come up with the idea, you're giving birth to the idea. So, so even from the time when we're including Menashe into this conversation, that's Zachor. So that's what he's saying over here, Zachor. Zachor is hadvar she'asiva eschem Moshe and Hashem. Meaning, you should do something about this idea that Moshe commanded you. And just like a Zachor is being able to be mashpia, so it's not just enough that you have this idea in your mind, but you have to do something about it. What are you going to do about it? Now you're going to go to Abur Chalutzim to help fight for Eretz Yisrael. And Lamar is going on Menashe as well, because they were like the sidekick. They weren't the ones that came with this idea be'etzem to be part of the to be part of the Bnei Gad Reuven, as we explained by Riches last time. Okay, so he says that that's a pshat in the Lamar also, because he says this that when Moshe commanded them, that's Tersha B'Ksav, because Pnei Moshe is Pnei Chama, as we spoke many times in the Gemara Bava Basra. And Yeshua learned from Moshe Rabbeinu b'midah she'atern addresses behem that there's something called davar halamed mein yanoi, which is the Torah Shabbal Peh. Meaning, what can we deduce from the Torah Shabbat? What can be learned out from what Moshe Rabbeinu said? Yeshua is learning out from what Moshe Rabbeinu said how to deal with and how to handle with Bnei Gad and Reuven now. And he says like this: Ki Pnei Yeshua Pnei Levana. And he goes back to say the same idea, that Moshe Rabbeinu is a koach hazachar, it's a bechinas zachar hamaylut, and Torah Shabbal Peh is bechinas hanekeva hamisgal al yod ha'telda shahais and alemes b'zachar. The concept is like this: that the zachar is mashpia, the nekeva is makabel. But where does the vlad take formation? It takes formation. The nekeva is what forms the tzuras ha-vlad. That's the meaning. So Moshe is the mashpia, Yeshua is the makabel, it's Kipnei Levana, he's the makabel. So where is the poil? Meaning the zachar is mostly mashpia, it comes from the machshava. Where's the lemais of it? Where's the poil of it? The poil of it is coming out through what Yeshua is doing. Now he's not telling them do what Moshe Rabbeinu says. He says, remember, go into that original machshava of, meaning what is zikaron, going into that machshava from your conversation, from your discussion in Parashas Matas, Parak Lamed Beis with Moshe Rabbeinu, and bring that b'poil. And that's the whole concept of what zikaron is. So that zachar is a lashon of, it's a lashon yachid, because it's a certain yachidus over here that they had. It's a certain yachidus that they had in a sense that it was one idea, it was one concept. So that's what he says. That's what it's lashon yachid, because it's going on this specific idea. Then he says, like it says in the Torah, in Parashas Matas, Lamed Beis Chaf Hei, Vayomer Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. It says, by Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, it says, Vayomer, not Vayomru. It's also Lashon Yachid. And in the Hemshech HaPsukim, it says over there that Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven were nechshel on what they said. Why? Because they paid more attention to the Mikneh and the Taf, and the Nashim were secondary. Meaning they were more focused on the animals and the children than the Nashim, which is the nekevas, and they can't make, meaning because the nekeva is the nekeva isn't just the makabel. The makabel means that that's where the tzuras havlad, that's where the vlad gets formed. So if you're focusing on the mikneh is something that's even more external than the taf. So you have the nashim, l'chayra, the ones that would be the makablim, so they're the ones that should be forming the vladis. But if they were focused on the mikdash, then they're missing it a little bit. So that's one thing that they made a mistake about, and another thing that they made a mistake, and that's what it says they made a mistake about. And also they said that they're going to be sheyabru chalutzim l'fnei b'nei Yisrael, and they didn't say l'fnei Hashem. And Moshe was mechiach them in these two things, because they wanted everything all at once. They said, so that's why Yeshua is telling them, don't talk too much, don't say too many things. You say too many things, they'll make mistakes like Bnei Gad and Reuven did originally. So Yeshua is trying to correct them and help them in this eifah. But l'chayra, I'll pay what we explained before, that the concept of Moshe, Pnei Moshe, Pnei Chama, Pnei Yeshua, Pnei Levana, Yeshua is the one that's making the tzuras havlad, because he's like the Levana. So by Moshe, it was much more in the machshava, it was much higher up, so to speak. It wasn't brought down into the lemaisa. So the idea is that Yeshua has to correct it in order to form it, in order to make it in order to give it the proper surah. So it tells us, Zachor, remember, go back to what Moshe Rabbeinu says, but we're bringing that machshava from that zikaron, and we're bringing that into Lamaisa. Because when you're going to be talking too much, you might say something that's Eino Nirtzel Lefnei Hashem, and you have to think about every single thing that you said. So that's why he says, it's like the Neisas, so that's why he says, Al Kain V'Yomer B'Loshin Yochid, by Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven over there. It's very interesting. And he says later that the idea was that what they should have done is, or what they did do, and I think we mentioned this idea also from the Kliyaka previously, that they should have had a shliach, or they did have a shliach, to talk to Moshe Rabbeinu, and not that, meaning that they'll have somebody who could be a spokesperson, not the Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. It sounds like from the fact that they had Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, that there was a lot of things going on over there. And there was a ribud dvarim, and they ended up talking about the Mikra first, and they ended up saying L'fnei Achechem instead of L'fnei Hashem. Mela, that's the, that was the issue. So Yeshua was coming to be Masak, and then he's saying Zachor, Lashon Yachid, to solidify and to give it a tzura, to give it much more of a tzura, to bring it more on point, if we could say such a thing. And that's the pshat in Lo Ruveni V'Lagodi, because that's Oisei Ha'ish Hamamlitz B'Adu Ruveni V'Hagodi Omer Yeshua Lemer L'Kulam. And that's the part in the Lemer also, because you have this person that's talking, that's being the spokesperson for Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. He's saying to Yeshua, Yeshua's talking to him, that's who's having the conversation. Okay, fine. That's as I thought. Good. Pasuk goes weiter. Es hadavar asher tziva. What says hadavar asher tziva? Should have said it's asher tziva. What's hadavar? Zachor is asher tziva. So the Bnei Yissaschar goes weiter over here, and he says that we just explained the idea of what Zachor means. It's going on this davar, which is a davar alamid ben yanoi, which is the kayach of Yeshua, of Tersha Balpeh, to deduce and take out of the Tersha B'Ksav and to give it a tzura. Because if you wouldn't have the davar, then it's going to go back Zachor on Asher Tziva. And that's what Moshe was mechiach them, that they should go to Milchama. But Im kol zeh tzrich l'chaber l'kayim amari yisbarach v'tzivuya shetziva le'iloche. And when they go to war, they shouldn't be going with the mindset of, we have to do this for our brothers, we have to do this for the land, but we have to do this because this is the Tzivui Hashem. And not to be chayshish, what Klal Yisrael, what the other Shvatim are going to say. On the tzad, he says like this: Ki b'zel yotzu yudei choyvas hamitzvah sasei deraisa shetzricha kavana l'kaim kasher tziva Hashem. They had a vazun derechiyuv. Them at that time definitely had a chiyuv of milchemes mitzvah, or to quote the Lashon Gemara, soita dafnam dalad or abez milchemes choyva, which is even greater than a milchemes mitzvah. Mitzvah Shem, will talk about that in the next little bit. Not in this year, Mitzvah Shem, the next one. But if they're not going to be Mekayim Kasher Tziva Hashem, then they're not going to be having the proper Kavanah, and they're not going to be out to the Chiyuv, as I talked there. And the Bnei Yissaschar holds very stark that Mitzvah Strichus Kavanah, and he, as I write there in Derech Pikudecha, and that's what they said in Parashas Matot, V'nachnu nechol tzchushim l'fnei b'nei Yisrael. And Moshe Amar, in Tasin Sadavar Hashem techolzu l'fnei Hashem l'milchama, v'yisem nikim me'Hashem u'mi-Yisrael. So then they answered, Oz Heshiva avadecha yavu kol chol tzava l'fnei Hashem l'milchama kasher doini doiver. So he says that's the pshat in Hadavar, because it's going on the dibur, it's going on this that they were talking about. It's not going on the tzivui alone, that's the Indian of the soldiers going over. But it's Hadavar sheyatzu mipi Moshe. The davar that was yatzu mipi Moshe, the words that came out of Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth were to do the Ratzon Hashem. That it should be sheyavru chalutzim l'fnei Hashem, and to have a kavanah to be mekayim the mitzvah of Hashem. And without this kavanah, so then hinei chatasam l'Hashem. That's what the pasuk says. And with this, the Bnei Yissaschar also explains that that's why Moshe is called Eved Hashem. And he brings that the Chavis Halvavis writes in the Shar HaChnal Paraches that the Geder HaEved HaNeman Asher Lo Yaseh Ki Im Rotzon HaOdem V'Lo Yishtadel Ki Im Ba'apokas V'Tzoynoi. The only thing, the one desire that an Eved has is to do the Rotzon Hashem. So when Moshe is talking to Bnei Gad and Bnei Ruvain, what does he want from them? He wants them to do the Ratzon Hashem. Not to be concerned about the Shvatim, not to be concerned about the Goyim, not to be concerned about anything else, but only to be concerned about Ratzon Hashem, and that they should go in with, and that is the Kavanas HaMitzvah. That's how they have to go in fighting this Milchama. Meaning that even though you're going to be doing the Maisa, even if the part you're doing the Maisa of the Ratzon Hashem, but if you're not going to be saying and speaking and thinking that you're doing the Ratzon Hashem, so then it's very nice that you did it, but you're not connecting yourself to the Ratzon Hashem. You're not thinking about the Ratzon Hashem. So that's why Yeshua calls Moshe Eved Hashem over here. He says that's the idea. Klali over here is to be Mekayim the Ratzon Hashem. And L'chara would seem like there was a little bit shver for Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain because they were coming with the time to make it Rav. So then it's, what's their focus? Their focus is that we have a lot of miknah, we need land for them. That doesn't sound like a very spiritual quest bichlal, right? But Kafi Ha'amor, that we mentioned many times, and it's brought down in the Shem Yishmul, Shem Derbin Mepshischa, and they bring from the original also, that they said Mikra Rabbis, they had a kinyan in Rebbe, that they had a kinyan in Moshe Rabbeinu. So if they had a kinyan in Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that was Kol Kulei Ratzon Hashem, like the Chaim Salvava says. So now we don't have to be concerned that they're going to do something that's not Mamish Ratzon Hashem. And besides for that, it's just Ketayah to know that the Zechir over here is that you should remember the mitzvahs, that the mitzvahs Tzrichas Kavanah. And that's all. You don't need to have any time when you're having the kavanah. You're just doing this because this is what the Ratzon Hashem is. Now, Zok there, that's only, meaning this, that you don't have to have a kavanah for the time of the mitzvah, is only by a mitzvah where the time is not mafurish in the Torah. But where you have the time, the reason for the mitzvah, if the reason for the mitzvah is explained in the Torah together with the mitzvah, then you're mechuyev to be mechaven for the reason also. The hainu, that when I'm doing the mitzvah, I have to be mechaven, that I'm doing the mitzvah, that Hashem told us to do it, like the mitzvah of sukkah. Like we know that the mitzvah of sukkah is, even if you don't hold mitzvah strichas kavanah, it's a famous ba'achin of sukkah, that you have to do it. That not just you have to have the kavanah of the mitzvah, but also that Laman Tiskar, that Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim. And the Bnei Yisrael writes this in Derech Pikudech in the Akdama, or it's Dal. Inyan HaKavanu, Shetzorch L'chaven, Hinyan Mechav B'asiyos Yisois, Lo Otis Yidei Chayvas Mitzvah Plainis, Kasher Tzivanu Hashem Elokeinu. The Inyan of Kavana is that I'm doing this big Kavana, that with this Maitag that I'm doing, I'm being Mechaven, to be Yotzi Yidei Chayvas Mitzvah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to do. That's the Ikar Kavana M'chuyaves, and if not for that, you're not Yotzi the Mitzvah. So he's up there, he holds with the Strichas Kavana. Now that's by Rav Mitzvahs Minat Torah. That the reason's not explained. Aval Mitzvah Shemavur Batam Any Yetzer B'Kavana. Now B'Vad Rak Tzarech L'Cham and Gam L'Tam the Hainu Hineni Mechaven B'Asiyos Zois. I'm being Mechaven when I'm doing this mitzvah. Lotus Yidei Chayvas Mitzvah Plainis Kasher Tzivanu Hashem L'Keinu Mitam Plaini. And he says you'll find this in Shulchan Aruch in Aruch Chaim Siman Ches Siv Ches. That when a person puts on tzitzis, he has to be mechaven be'es atvei shetzivanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu l's'atef boy. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded him to put on the tzitzis. And l's'atef pashtus means to wear a second covering over your head, which is why we put the talus over our head. K'dei shenizkor kol mitzvaysav la'asaysom. Says Laman Tizkor in the Torah. Me'yoyis tam ha-mitzvah mefurish b'Torah. Like the pasuk says b'ferish, Risa Meisav Zchartim Skal B'Tzis Hashem. Also the same says in the Tefillin, by Tefillin, it says in the Pri Megadim. And also in the Bach in the beginning of Chasukas and Tafresh Chafei. And somebody was ma'ir that l'chayra it's by Pidyon Aben also to remember Yitzis Mitzrayim. And every time that you have a tam mitzvah, then you have to be ma'ir that tam when you're having the Kavanas mitzvah. And if not, it's a chsar that's a Maisa mitzvah. And Moshe was mitzvah to do this mitzvah. Why should it be hard on the other Shvatim? Right? And that's the Inyan of Achechem, like we said. That's the mitzvah to say Deraisa. And so over here, they had to be Mechaven for the Tam HaMitzvah also, because the Torah said Lamos Siniyut. So if the word is that it's Lamos Siniyut, so then you have to be Mechaven for the Tam also. And we could still the words in the Beskirav that we said from Reb David last time. Because even if Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven wanted to back out of it tonight, they were mechuyev mitzad mitzvahs Hashem, that Hashem was mitzava isam, sheken yazu v'yavru l'fnei Hashem b'milchama. And that's the Zechor Advar Shetziva. Meaning, they got themselves into this, that now, it's not just that there's a tonight that they can back out of. Even if they wanted to back out of it, they can't back out of it. So then, if they're going to go into this and they're going to fight and they're not going to be mechaber this way, then they're not going to be mechaber the mitzvah. Memela, that's why Moshe over here is called Moshe Avad Hashem. L'pal yonru, hine zeh hadin b'mitzvah saberi yisbarach shmoi, shomu yisbarach ha-mitzvah v'atam. Ma she'en ken zeh omar Moshe mechshash l'masaniyon, en tzrichen l'zeh kavarna l'mitzvah l'tam. But the Zach is like this, you might say, no, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that made this up. So then you don't need to be mechaven. He's saying a very long disregard over here. He's saying, it's one thing if the Torah says the reason for it, but over here, it was Moshe Rabbeinu having a conversation with Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. So if it's just a conversation with Moshe Rabbeinu, make it tasty that that's enough to be mechayiv you, a kavanah for the tam, make it tasty that's enough to be mechaven for the tam ha-mitzvah. Meaning just because Moshe Rabbeinu said Lama Sunil, like a Fideh B'Skrav comes out even better. A Fideh B'Skrav comes out even more geshmak and much more v'chiyav over here. Because they can't, there's no backing out of it. Even if you're not going like the B'Skrav, so then you still have the Lama Sunil. You don't have that stark conceiving that he says at the end that they can't back out of it. Memel the rest is called Avad Hashem. Shelo yasev lo yedaber davar mibalad b'svarach shmoi. V'shchina medabers v'tech roinoi. Advar of divrei Hashem hema. And Memel, that's why he says that's Shad and Lamar. Because he's Avad Hashem, and everything he says is Shchina medabers v'tech roinoi. Now I know that even if Shchina is not the Etzem speaking through his garoi, right? Even if he's saying something else, but because Shechina Medaberes B'Tech Groin, his Hametzias is a bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the sense that he has no Sechin, he has nothing else besides Ratzon Hashem. Mela, everything else, even if he's saying something on his own, because he's an Avad Hashem, so then everything that he does and everything that he says is got to be Ratzon Hashem also. So then it's that also is a bichin of Shechina Medaberes B'Tech Groin, right? And that's also going to be mechavik v'sim mitzvahs. So Mamela, when there's a tam ha-mitzvah, even if it's only coming from Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't saying it b'nevuah, so to speak, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but because it's coming from Moshe Rabbeinu, that in and of itself is enough to be mechayiv the tam ha-mitzvah, and lama siniyun, that why should the other shvatim, why should you stay there and the other shvatim should have to go fight you? You have to go fight with them. And that in and of itself is enough to be mechayiv you for the kavonas ha-mitzvah, to be mechaven, to be mechuyev, to be mechaven for the tam ha-mitzvah as well. We state in Bach, we state in Prima Gadol, like we just said. Okay. It's good to speak out the Lashon Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, Perek Zayin Halacha Tezvav. Stam, it's, with the last little while I was thinking that, it'd be a great disservice if we don't go through the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, because how do you fight a war? The halachas of Malachim and the Mulchamas is all explained within the Rambam, and we'll get back to a lot of different akudas, Rit Hashem, and Rit Hashem one day we'll give a shir in the Rambam and Hilchos Malachim as well together with all the other Yad HaChazak of the Rambam and others of the Rambam. So this is the Lashon of the Rambam. It's just the idea, the kavanah of a Jewish soldier. These Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, Klal Yisrael is going into Eretz Yisrael to fight against the Shavumas. They just fought against Sichon Va'ig. What's the kavanah? What should they be thinking? What's going on? Mi Yehoish, this is Lashon Rambam, Hilchos Malachim, Perek Zayin Halacha Tezvav. Mi Yehoish hayar v'rak halevav k'mashmoi. The pasuk says, somebody who's yareh, who's fearful and has a soft heart, k'mashmoi, like it seems. She'emi li b'koich lamid b'kitshei ha-milchama. He doesn't have strength to see all the chaos and destruction of the battlefield. Me'achad she'konis b'kitshei ha-milchama. But now that he enters into the tangles of the war, Yishayin al mikveh Yisrael u'mashiach be'ez tzara. He has to rely on the mikveh Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he has to be hopeful that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be mashiach be'ez tzara, v'yeda she'al yichud Hashem hu oisem milchama. And he should know that he's doing this for yichud Hashem. He's fighting this war for Yichud Hashem. V'yasam nafshay bekapa, and he's putting his life in his hands. V'lo yirav v'lo yivchad v'lo yachshav v'lo be'ishtav v'lo be'banav v'lo yimche zechron milibay. He shouldn't think about his wife. He shouldn't think about his children. He should erase their zikaron. He shouldn't think about them. He should erase them from his memory, from his mind. Yifne mikol davar l'malchama. He should be 1,000% focused on the milchama. And somebody who starts to think and starts to have herhurim, starts to have thoughts during the war, and he starts getting afraid, and he starts worrying himself, so then he's over in Leisasei. Shenemar al yerech levavchem. Don't soften your heart. Al tiru. Don't be afraid. Al tachvuzu. Don't get scrambled. And don't be afraid of them. Don't be scared of them. Don't be afraid of them. Don't worry about them. All the Jewish blood is totally is going to be on his neck. And a person who's in the battle, but he's not fully focused and he's not fully driven, and he's not fighting with the ganzkeit, so then he's a Reitzeach. If you cause others to get scared and to get weak in the Milchama, so then it's then you're ever in Aveira. It's cursed to be a person who makes trickery out of the Malachas Hashem. And cursed should be a person who withholds blood on his sword, meaning go and kill them. Anybody who fights with his whole heart without any fear, and his sole kavana, his sole thoughts and drive is only l'kadish as Hashem bilvad, it's guaranteed that he will not get hurt, he will not get injured, and he won't, and no bad shall befall him. He'll be able to build an established home in Klal Yisrael. And he'll be zeicher to have children and grandchildren at Olam. And he'll be zeicher to Chaylam Abba Shenemar. Ki also yas Hashem ladoni bayis nemor. Ki milchames Hashem adoni nilcham. V'ro le'timtzabach. And there will be no bad over there. V'hoysa nefesh adoni tzur v'tzor achayim es Hashem lekecha. That's the expression that we say all the time. Nefesh adoni tzur v'tzor achayim. That's talking about the people that are Leichem the Muhammad, which is very, very powerful. The Shainis of the Rambam over here, that the idea is that it has to be kol kulei l'shem shemayim. We don't kill people. We're not killing people. We don't kill people. It's against the Torah. It's against everything we stand for. In the Mulchama, it's ar menei char b'midam. It's just my ha'ar. One ha'ar is v'yivna lebayis lachem b'Yisrael. I think the pshat is because he says before that he should be meiches zichram of Ishtay Yubanov. We know that Kol Yetzel Mechamas Best David get increases Kesev Lishtay. For whatever it is, maybe she's not interested in him anymore. Or whatever it is, but Agaparim, it says V'yivna lebayis nacham b'Yisrael. He should reestablish his bias when he comes back from the war. Whatever, that's the long and short of the Indian of Kavanos HaMelchama. And I was thinking, I think it's off a shtickle. I was thinking about the shaila that people have about having kavanah for mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. That's not this. We're not talking about the mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael now. We're talking about the milchama that the mitzvahs chayva, the milchemas chayva that Klal Yisrael had, as the Gemara calls it in Saita, the milchemas chayva that Klal Yisrael had, led by Yeshua, to go into Eretz Yisrael. So that's the kavanah that you need to have over here, like the Bnei Yisrael says. So Shaila Stam, it's good to be Ma'ira. And it goes back to what we said before in the Meisas, so maybe Kedai to Shtel too also. The Shaila over here, why does he say Ma'ishav et Hashem? There's a Shaila that a person is not allowed to say the name of his Rebbe. They state in Gemara, or they state in Aloha. But Lamaisa, Afal Pikein. even if a person, meaning Kolzman that it's Shalai B'fanav, then it shouldn't be an issue. It's less of an issue upon most places. But the Zag isn't, that's not the question. I think the question is a mistake. The word over here is that when we're going to Mulchama against the Zaynumis, when we're getting Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuben involved in this, we have to remember everything that Moshe Rabbeinu said. Zachor, you have to remember this. Zachor is Advar Shetziva Moshe Eved Hashem Leimar. Tziva Eschem Moshe Eved Hashem Leimar. So there's no welcome to say anything different. So we know this Yerushalmi that says that the best way to go into the Mulchama is by remembering this conversation with Moshe Rabbeinu, by remembering his chayvus that Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven had, and that there's no backing out. So that's why it says Moshe Eved Hashem. It doesn't say because you're not allowed to say representative. That's not the question here, B'chlal. The question here is nothing to do with saying your Rebbe's name. It's a silly question. There's no welcome for that bad time. The Nidin is that, okay, say maybe take it a step further. That's nishnor that you're a Baal Shmoim at Negdai, but it's also once we're talking about once we're being masker and trying to be zeicher, the schayvus for Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, maybe will also be ma'ir other zecharinus to be ma'ir the zekaron for the halachish and shtachu b'me'abla shamash. We should be able to remind ourselves of that from the being ma'ir the Baal Shmoim and Negdai of Moshe Rabbeinu. Fine, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's just an idea. Fine. Nachazach, Nacha'ara, Zachor, Sadavar, Shetziva, Eschem, Moshe, Eved Hashem, Lemar. Lemar generally means to say over to other people. So what does it mean? What's the context of Lemar? How do we understand it over here? So he's telling them you should remember the ideas that Moshe Rabbeinu commanded you. And again, we're saying that it's not the pshat that he was being mazhir them, he's being mazkir them. He's reminding them. And they know good and well what they have to do. It was their idea, and they were mekabel when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke out. But Efshel Leimar, I saw Psavart, Efshel Leimar, that Moshe Rabbeinu was asking from Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven that two things over here. That one good is that Moshe Rabbeinu says that he wanted all the kol cholutz l'amul chama, meaning anybody who's roy, even if right now he's not, but maybe eventually will be, should start getting training and should start getting involved because it's still a mitzvah to help. Meaning these 7 years, let's say someone's going to be a mitzvah in 2 years. Right now he's not mechuyev, but then in 2 years he would be mechuyev. Maybe al tzchinuch he would be mechuyev. But in some way, and his shevet took responsibility to do that. So now he's a bar chiyuva. He has to go along with that. He would have went over. You know, they always come back. And they go back and forth. You know, they take little breaks and they come back. So the soldiers leave and come back. So you'll take the new soldiers with you also. And Nachazak L'cher that goes hand in hand with this is that the lemar is that Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven were mitzvah to say over this tziva of Moshe Rabbeinu to the children when they get older. Like the pasuk says, "Vayomer Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven al Moshe lemar." Dar Chaim HaKadosh asks, "Why do you say lemar?" They're talking to Moshe. What's the lemar? Well, L'fi Amar, it comes out very good because they were makabel on themselves to teach their children that when they get bigger, that they should come help. When they get older, they should come help Klal Yisrael. Now, it's not just now, but it's for the future as well. So if you take a look in the Chumash, in the Bracha, in Mezes HaBracha, it says in Parashas Mezes HaBracha, by the Bracha of Shevet Gad, and Moshe tells them, let's pull it up over here, just give me a second. L'god Omar Baruch Marchiv God. What's Baruch Marchiv God? Malamed she Tchuma shel God Marchiv v'helech klapei mizrach. It was going wider and wider towards the east. Kilavi shochen. He lies like a lion, like a lavi, a female lion, a lioness. The Torah v'zroya af kod koid. What does that mean? It's hard to translate that in English, but Rashi says Harugayim hayu nikarim. It was very clear if somebody was killed, they had a signature way of killing. Like a lot of times you have these serial killers that they kill in very specific oifen. One bullet specifically in that part of the body, whatever it is. So the warriors of Shevet God, they fought like that also. Tarab Zraya of Kotkad, Rashi says, Harugayim hayu nikarim. Chaytchem haroshim hazraya b'maka achas. They would cut off the head and one arm in one fell swoop. Now, what's the lumdus of this? Why? So the pashtus is because it was very scary, to start up with this chevra. Well, the chayrik, if what we explained, it comes out very good. We said that there's two bechinas over here. There's the bechina of Moshe k'pnei Chama and Yeshua k'pnei Levana. The pnei Chama pshat is that's the machshava. That's connected to the Rosh. And the Zroya is the arm. That's the Klei HaMaisa. So that's Yeshua. So they were destroying the enemy aside from the Machshavas and aside from the Maisa. So Shem is very good like that. The pasuk goes right there. Just maybe one quick ara. Zachor Sadavar Shatziva Eschem Tziva is Gematria 101. And we know from the Gemara Chagiga Sheni Daimer Sheni Pirkei Mea Pamel Mea V'achas. And befrat when you come into Eretz Yisrael, like the Gemara says about Reb Zera, that he chazed everything, that he was maspalal 100 tefillas, fast on shtanesim, whatever it was. The Gemara about Metzia Pehei mentioned in the previous year to be zeichet to the Torah Eretz Yisrael. So when you're coming into Eretz Yisrael, I was thinking a different akuda, that maybe the pshat is that when there's a certain yichud the Klal Yisrael has with the Kodesh Baruch when they're coming into Eretz Yisrael. They're going into a place which is the Ikar Makom Ashras HaShechina that ever was. And this is from the most exciting moments in the history of the world, in the history of Klal Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael is coming into Eretz Yisrael. So that's the 101. Because the one more, the 100 is it's a regular number. 101 is always the one. It's like the cherry on top. It's like the grand finale. That's the Spitz Yichud, the Spitz Madrega, that I think they bring from the Baal Tanya, they bring from others, that the pshat is that it's 100 is very good, you did it enough times, but 101 shows real Ava. So that's the pshat when they're going into Yisrael, that's what we're trying to show. A few more Nakudas and we're done. The Pasuk says, Hashem Lekechem Einiach Lechem. The Bnei Yisrael says, why does it say Hashem Lekechem? Not Hashem Elokeinu, and he's saying your Hashem. He's, so to speak, almost sounds like he's being mitzvah to him in that cloud. So he says he wanted them to say, and there it was a hate of libam. He made them feel good. Because you could think that they're coming on their own to Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. They made up their own ideas, and this is what they wanted to do. And what's it got to do with anything? That it's their own bechira and it's their own ruts, and that they wanted to do that. And maybe maybe it's going to happen that one day they're going to wake up. Oh, we're so silly. We really should have. One day they'll have some service, so we should really be part of Eretz Yisrael. So maybe they'll have charata that there was a bad idea, and maybe that they'll think that maybe they're not on such a high level of kedusha because they're outside of Eretz Yisrael, and maybe they're more shaykh to lower madregas. But it's Hashem Lekechem. Hashem, that's our God, it's your God, there's nothing to worry about. This whole Maisa came about, Me'ez Hashem. And like we explained, and that's what it says Lekechem. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being Miyachid Shema Aleichem. U'mimenu yetzu kvushim, v'atem b'bchirastem hisagtem das Elyon. Shema Yisbarach nikra Aleichem Lekechem. Kihu Alekei Yisrael. There's no sveikus over here, there's no charot over here, everything's going to be good, you made the right decision. Even though you're not in there to Yisrael together with everyone else. And that's the pshat of Menasam Lechem Esaretz Hazois. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to you originally. This was Machshava Keduma, he says. And Matayv Chalkeichem, you have nothing to worry about. You're going to enjoy this, you're never going to have charat on this. And he says another pshat, Hashem Lekechem, he says Elikim is Meira and Lashon Koyach. And when they say, when we're talking about Hashem Lekechem and Einiach Lechem, what we mean over here is that he's koyach kol hakoyches, v'sibas kol hasibos. And Hashem Lekechem hu sibaschem. Umimenu yetzu kvushim, and from HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes out these ideas, like Ba'adi Kapshid Barchaman Alamalach, what kind of cheshbainis you're getting involved in over here with Kodesh Baruch Hu's cheshbainis. Well, we spoke, let's them all, that there was a shtickle pagam in the Sibur Rishayna will speak, that from Yaakov Avinu, that the Tailodas of Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain came out in the Sefer, that they have to be a mark of the Gvulei Sakdusha, and they'll stay in the Malkam Akdusha. And not only that, but we mentioned previously that by the Yifas Toyar, what's the issue of the Yifas Toyar? The issue of the Yifas Toyar is that the Yetzer Hara, it says like Dibra Torah L'Keneged Yetzer Hara. Why? Because we're talking about when we're being marked with the Gvulei Sakdusha. But being marked with the Gvulei Sakdusha, that's Baruch Marchiv God. That's what the pasuk says in Zisei Bracha. The idea is that Baruch is also the lashon of brecha. It's also the lashon of expansion. Baruch Marchiv God, that God is going to keep on expanding and it's going to keep on growing in a sense and spiritually also. It's constantly going to be growing spiritually also, and you don't have to be worried. And you should never come to you'll never have any thoughts or have any haratas, have any regrets about making this decision, because it was Meis Hashem Haisazos, and it was it all worked out well. You don't have to worry about it. And not only that, but the Harchavas Gulei Sakdusha is going to come from you, and that's the greatest Kedusha, is by taking something chayil and being mekadosh it. That's a lot greater than, as we spoke many times, that when you eat. So when a person's davening, so he knows he's going into Kedusha. When a person eats, he's being Isaac in Indian Gashmi, he's being Ma'alat Teruchani in a certain oifen. It's a lot greater than doing a Ma'aser Ruchni. He's making something that chayil into Kaidosh. So that's what they were doing over here. And he says, this piece of land that Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain have, it's going to be much greater Kedusha, and it's in the beginning of the Psikta. It says, Omer of Levi, Asidu Yerushalayim Lias Eretz Yisrael. The Yerushalayim is going to end up being like Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is going to spread out all over the world. And this had to be done originally by Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain. And this is going to end up being Mesakin for the Keni Knis and the Kadmoni, which is the meaning, because they were, that's what we spoke, that they were from the Ramban, 9 Shvatim, 10 Shvatim, but the really Zionumas, and but there are also these 3 that are only going to be left for Lasid. And so you'll say, oh, well, maybe they'll be worried because it may have some charotas and it may have some chashashas or some tinus in a sense. Why did Yaakov Avinu have to have this little type of pagam that's going to be doicha them from being in Eretz Yisrael? But you'll see in the end, you'll see in the end that these people were the ones who are marked with the glus sakdusha, asachas achras, asachas achecha, for everyone else. And you're not going to ask them, as I said, Hashem lonu, sheyiyah told they say to be Yaakov Eichenzeh, and they're not going to be left out in the cold. It was only Hashem says there's going to be a tremendous amount of kedusha that they're going to bring in also. Fine. One last idea. Hashem lekechem meniach lechem v'nosan lechem. What's meniach lechem and nosan lechem? So the Malbim is ready on this. V'nira, that we're coming to say over here, that there was a chiyuv over here, because Hashem is meniach lechem, and they don't need to be taking care of their wives and their children and the animals like the rest of Klal Yisrael. Why? Because they're staying on the other side of the Yarden, and you are going to cross. Meaning, Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain, you are going to cross over the Yarden together with everyone else, and their wives, and their children, and their animals. But because you don't have to be worried about your wives and your children, because they already settled in Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain, Eretz Yichem v'Yoyik, so you have much more of a chiyuv to be much more focused on the Mulchama. And in the Pirush of Rabbeinu Yosef Bechor Shar and Parshas Matos, he explains that Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain were mitzvah to be the ones to lead them in the battle. Why? Because their wives and their children weren't with them. This stems with the Rambam very good. And he says that Lefi Zeh, Yeshua came to them and he told them, to Bnei Gad Bnei Ruvain, that Hashem was meniach lechem, that there's already a space for your children and your wives and your families. So you have to be mechazik more in the war. And that's in the Hemshech HaPasuk, Neshechem, Tapchem, and Meknechem, and the Hemshech HaPasuk, that you don't have to be worried about that. they're going to stay in that place where they already conquered. And this is going to lead us into the next pasuk about what's going to be with the children. And really, that's the meaning that it's l'chera pashat. I'm gonna have to explain this too much. We already mentioned that the idea is that they want that piece of land. The Tanai was that they're going to cross over the earth and they're going to fight. But because the wives are not with them, they don't have to be concerned about them. In fact, according to Rambam, they're not allowed to be concerned about them. But Hashem Elokeichem iniach lechem right away and gives it to them right away without any Tanai, whether they go over, whether they don't go over, right? And now you're Shluchei Mitzvah and you're fighting for Klal Yisrael. You're going in the front of the battle. And your Neshechem Betavchem will be able to be settled. They're not going to be worried about anything. Everyone's going to come home. And that's a huge bracha when people go out to war and everybody comes home. And everybody can build a Bayis Neman like the Rambam says. And Tavr, V'atam Tavr, Kol Giborei HaChayil, all of them. And not only that, but you're not going to have any chshashas that anybody's going to bother them. Many times, the person's not home. We know from the Gemara, when the person's not home, the neighbors come to shepherd. Then no one's going to come to shepherd because they're scared of them and no one's going to fight with them. The Eibishter all helping that we should be zeichet to be mekayim all the mitzvahs of Hashem with the proper kavanah and with the proper imutz halev, and we should be focused. We should become focused people, focused on Ratzon Hashem. Everyone should have a lot of hatzlocha.